Well, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another in the series of the Crypto Conspiracy. This is David Morgan of themorganreport.com, and I have Credence with me from an undisclosed location. Now, before we start, he sent me quite a set of bullet points. I'm going to go over the first three of them. I'm not sure we're going to get through all of them on this video. We may do another one. But what I do want to say is that I did vet him to the best of my ability. And we are calling this a conspiracy. So in light of that, Credence, give us not your location, but a little bit of your background, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So my background is primarily in engineering. It's something that I absolutely loved when I was growing up. I always wanted to figure out how things worked and figure out how I can fix things, better contribute to society. I did, out of college, get into engineering. Spent my first few years of my career working in engineering, but ultimately just realized I was a cog in the machine. I wasn't really getting to be as creative as I wanted, to have the impact on society I wanted, and realized if I wanted to do that, I had to get into entrepreneurship, do my own thing, and was always very interested in economics. This was always a side passion of mine. And as I got more into entrepreneurship, I got more and more into the financial system. And as my interest in finance grew, along with economics, I just started, to figure out also a lot of what happens behind the scenes. And personally ended up becoming similar to yourself, very much into, an adherent to the Austrian School of Economics, sound money principles. It became a big gold bug. But I also started to look for ways that I could actually have an impact and contribute through financial engineering rather than mechanical or electrical engineering, which was the genesis of the projects that I'm working on outside of this. But long story short, I'm personally aiming to help out the world in as many ways as I can through those ventures, but I'm also looking to try to help society just through awareness and waking up and seeing where some of the problems are, what's behind them, what's causing them. And I think that as people generally become more and more aware, they'll be able to have their own impact and their own ability to manifest change.
All right. Well, the first question I'm going to get, you know what it is, we already discussed it, is, why should we believe you? And of course, this can't be proven, but give us, in your language, why should we believe you? Why should we trust you? Why do we, what can you give us that provides, insight into what you're about to tell us? Because it's pretty intriguing.
Well, I think the best way to answer that is to just say, don't trust me personally.
Trust the information.
Because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to present the information that I have.
Right.
Come across, and I'm going to inform you of the sources,
right.
and I'll direct you to them. Maybe by the time you actually publish this video, you'll have already been able to go through it yourself and put links into it, or share maybe some clips of other interviews that I'll tell you about.
Okay.
And I would say that I myself have come to trust these sources,
sure,
because not only does it make sense to me, but I've been able to put a lot together outside and add in other pieces of the puzzle. So I think it's something that I like to look at objectively and would say, I'm bringing this now to you and your audience. Let's all look at the pieces of the puzzle. I'll lay them out as I see them, and everyone else can also put them together and see if it makes sense for them as well.
Excellent. I like your answer. So here's the reading glasses. I'm going to just read the first three bullet points. I don't know how long that's going to take us, and then we'll pick it up from there. So the first thing that you inform me about is the origin of Bitcoin, why it was created, and what's the end goal, who Satoshi is, or rather who the brothers Satoshi are, and who backed it. Yes, Dan Penna is right. People would run the other way if they knew. Based on this, I have a solid feeling he knows as well. Second bullet point, the end game, Kraken, and a timeline, May, June 2022. Entering final bear trap today, one more pump to follow before the big dump to squeeze out the last drops from retail, and leads calls for regulation and Fedcoin, central bank digital currencies, to replace decentralized cryptos. Boy, I'm on that page. Last, not that I want to be on that page, but I'm agreeing that's our trend. Last one, not the last one, but the last one we'll probably have time for today. Ongoing re-centralization, network consensus via consolidation of mining rigs, and who actually has the authority over the blockchain. And you put dash dash, it's still Satoshi. I think that's enough to get us started. Okay. Back to you, Credence. Let's have it.
Well, I almost think, it would be good to do a very high level of the whole thing, and then go into those bullet points,
right.
and do a deeper dive on the first few bullet points, and then we can do a deeper dive on the later bullet points. But let's just cover, 30,000 feet down, the bigger picture and where the source of this information kind of came from. I'm quite comfortable now. I try to, keep a low profile on a lot of things, but I'm quite comfortable now sharing this and the source, because I know that this source has actually started to be shared around and lots of people are already aware of it. So I'm not going to be seen as the whistleblower here by any means. I'm just bringing forth, what I've found from it, the additional puzzle pieces I've put together, and also how it fits into what you've already figured out and discussed on this podcast so far. So the source of this information is an individual. Perhaps you've heard of his name already or not in this field, but his name is Boyd Anderson. And apparently he was a salesperson who was doing some business in the Middle East, and originally from Canada, but doing his business in the Middle East, and ultimately was befriended by a individual who he identified as perhaps a very high-level money launderer, who was working directly with bankers from Switzerland, and from what he could discern, this was the very top of the banking food chain. And this person, over the years that he was, apparently this person sort of, as he befriended him, shared and ended up inviting him to work from his office, and became very close to him. And so this guy became privy to everything he was working on, all the people that were coming and going from his office, and was even invited into some of these meetings about what was going on. And he was invited to be a part of the project overall, and ended up declining to be a part of it. But what he discloses in his interview is that there was a plan going back to 2007, 2008, thereabouts, well before Bitcoin was originally launched, to transport a bunch of gold that was held up in Thailand to the Perth Mint, and then to remint it, get rid of any traceability on any of the assays or whatever, and get it, and then get it, once it was reminted, end up moving it into storage of the personal accounts, or the personal custody of the individuals that were involved in this whole thing. And apparently this gold, the origin of this gold, is that it was the Pahlavi dynasty's gold. So that would be Muhammad Reza, Shah of Iran. Somehow after the revolution, these people had come into, had been able to essentially come into possession of the Pahlavi gold, one way or another. And there were hundreds of tons of it, supposedly. This was, what was backing the Iranian government prior to the revolution. And they had no way they were trying to devise a way to get this gold that was, essentially stolen, and get it washed, and so that they could keep it for themselves. And this is the way they had devised to do it. They had an agreement somehow with someone at the Perth Mint or someone in Australia that was going to do it for them. They just had to find a way to get it And he also then discloses that at the same time, they were talking about creating this Bitcoin thing. And it was a plan that was coming top down from Switzerland, from these banking elite families. And sorry, I just train of thought there. Yeah, so there's this top-down plan from these banking families to create a digital currency. And this was right around the time of the 2008 crash. People were all moving into gold, looking for that safe haven after everything that had happened. And they wanted to get people away from gold. They wanted to be able to consolidate the gold for themselves. They wanted to give people something that was easier, something that was that was also more up to the times, or more modern, right? More something digital, something that had the perception of privacy, the perception of anonymity, that would also have the perception of decentralization. And then they wanted to release it through this anonymous entity that would supposedly be opposed to the banking system, that would paint the picture and write the white paper from this very Austrian perspective, so that it could get everybody who already saw the problems with the financial system to sort of see this as their savior or messiah, in a sense, to move into, thinking that they were going to get away from the central banks and those that control the globe's financial system. Anyway, he also figured out who this Satoshi person was supposed to be at the same time. But before I get into that, what was interesting is he then discloses later on that these two Malaysian airplanes that disappeared, MH370, he apparently even confirmed with them, this contact he had later on, that they ended up using these planes, apparently hijacked or whatever, while this whole, and once they disappeared, the planes weren't gone. The first plane, MH370, he claims wasn't gone. He makes the claim that while the Australian Air Force was then having this whole, cordoned off search area of the Indian Ocean, that was just keeping people out, keeping the prying eyes out. And this plane that they had commandeered, essentially, was then used to transport all of this gold from Thailand through several flights over many months, back from Thailand to Perth. And that's why that whole search area was, of course, Southeast Asia out over the Indian Ocean towards Perth. And essentially Australia was just keeping people out, keeping the prying eyes out. So very bold claim there. Would have to have some very powerful people involved in that. But he is confident that this is how they did it. And he apparently, yes, confirmed with the person that he had befriended in Dubai that was working for the bankers that this is how they did it. Anyway, who he identifies as Satoshi, and he was privy to this one way or another, is Elon Musk. Now, what is interesting is Elon Musk has been claimed to be Satoshi, before by other people. And there are some reasons you might want to believe it. Obviously, he pokes his nose into crypto a lot, tweets a lot about it. Bitcoin's written in C++. He apparently is very good at programming C++. There's even SpaceX and Tesla and everything, all their coding that they do is C++. So this is one of the things that people have used to support that claim, but on its own, it doesn't hold a lot of water. Or at least you can, there's gaps, right? There's gaps that are unanswered. But where it comes full circle is when you realize that Elon Musk started off as co-founder of PayPal with Peter Thiel, of course. When PayPal was, and by the way, I'm not stating this is 100% true. I'm just saying this is, again, the evidence, and it's worth looking at. It's not my claim, it's how I'm discerning it. So when Elon Musk and Peter Thiel started started PayPal. Originally, their goal was to create a digital currency. This was the original defined goal of PayPal before they became an intermediary processor. So already the intention is there. The next thing is that Peter Thiel, apparently, this is through a different documentary, not the same claim, but I did come across another documentary that was talking about Peter Thiel and a bunch of other billionaires offloading a ton of gold into New Zealand and storing it in bunkers. So nobody really knew where this gold had come from, which, sort of fits that picture of this gold coming from whatever happened in Australia with this gold that came from Thailand. Somebody's moving it somewhere. It's being moved into storage. So Peter Thiel's moved a bunch of it into storage and has this bunker in New Zealand somewhere, as do a bunch of other people. I think Bill Gates, etc., other names that are very high up in current geopolitical events apparently have property in New Zealand, and they all seem to have bunkers. Now, another thing that really, makes this seem to come full circle is that Peter Thiel has been hugely invested lately in buying Bitcoin mining operations, buying mining rigs, by consolidating mining rigs. He's got a huge amount of it in Texas. At the same time, Elon Musk is starting to move all his companies into Texas. And people like to think of Bitcoin as being, decentralized, and there's no authority over it, and that you can't change the code unless you have network consensus. Well, if you're buying up all the mining rigs, you're buying up the network consensus. If you're reconsolidating them, you're consolidating that consensus. You're able to then, introduce bugs into the program, etc. If you are able to get that consensus. And this Boyd Anderson guy makes the claim that back when he was in Dubai, when they were talking about the whole thing, they had a timeline figured out already. And their timeline was going to come mid-2022, mid-2023, where they were going to crash it all and they were going to introduce a bug into the system. And they already knew how to introduce this bug into the system. So that's, it fits anyways. What was I going to say? Oh, in terms of, how you can get the network consolidation too, and just afford to do it. Obviously, you pump the price up, you dump it, you're able to sell into cash and then buy up the miners when the miners are low, bring them under your control, and then essentially own the network. When you look at what China's doing in terms of banning, crypto mining, moving all the miners out of China, all of a sudden now the U.S. is the leader in Bitcoin mining again, and most of it's in Texas. It is all under that authority. So it does seem to be centralized there. So if what Boyd claims to be the case is correct, and it is Elon Musk, and perhaps in conjunction with Peter Thiel, the two of them, that's why I said the brothers Satoshi, not just one of them, they seem to be working together on the same project they were always working on, to reconsolidate this creature they created, which is Bitcoin, and then have final control over it again. And they've got the gold at the same time that they could eventually perhaps back it with, or crash it with, or move into. I don't know exactly. But what I can say is that I myself am probably not the best at telling the story. I think that we have what would be really important. Well, I think it would be good to actually, if you're looking at a follow-up video, actually even interviewing Boyd Anderson, because he would probably do a much, much better job at detailing who he knows, why he knows it, and how all these things came up. But he did also mention that he connected some other dots too, and these dots are other ones that go back to Epstein as well. And people, there was a time when Musk was connected with Epstein, and then he said, "Oh no, I didn't know him. There's just some photographs taken of me with, Ghislaine Maxwell at a party." Maybe, I'm not saying he was involved with him in any way or other, but there was a photo of them together, or at least of him and Ghislaine together. But apparently, his brother Kimball Musk also used to date Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend. So there's another connection there. And I don't think this that Musk himself would have programmed it, the blockchain completely himself. Obviously, there were other people involved, people like Craig Wright, people like um, those connected to Harvard and MIT, and their programs that were working on it. They all go back to being connected to Epstein as well. You pointed this out earlier in your podcast series, but it does seem like at least Thiel and Musk were the project leads on the matter. They were the ones directing it or managing the project on behalf of the entities in Switzerland that had conceptualized it.
Okay. Wow. That's a mouthful. All right. Well, that pretty much covers the first bullet point. The second one, to remind you, is the end game, Kraken, the timeline, May, June 2022. Entering the final bear trap today, where we get one more pump, which looks like it's probably happening, followed by the big dump to squeeze the last drop from retail and lead to calls for regulation, Fed coins, central bank digital currencies to replace decentralized cryptos. And I'm going to keep talking for just a moment. I got in my report, my premium service, January of 2021, I said, watch out. Wall Street's discovered Bitcoin and no telling how high it's going to go. And it went, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I'm pretty familiar, especially from the mining industry, especially with the juniors, that there's often a pump and dump, and it can happen in almost in a large cap stock owned by tons of investors and insurance. That's a little tougher, but in something like Bitcoin, it can be done. But they needed a solution to be able to dump it, and that, of course, manifested with the big ETF. Most investors aren't sophisticated enough to know how to short a stock or short an ETF properly, or don't even want to do it. It's against their judgment to sell anything they don't own. But once I saw that manifest, I said, you know what? This is what it looks like could happen. You got the pump. Now you have a way. You have an ETF that you can dump it. And so, as is often done, the retail's left holding the bag, and they're really told to hold the bag. They're told to hodl or hold on. So you never sell Bitcoin. Well, why not? You're supposed to take profits, and then no matter how low it goes, it's always coming back. Just like real estate. Real estate never goes down until the crash of 2007-8 happened, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to make too much commentary, but I'm just aligning with your thought process here, and I want to get it on the record for people that don't subscribe to my work, that whether we're right or wrong, I'm in agreement with you. So why don't you carry on and tell us about the endgame Kraken and the timeline?
So absolutely, the ETF is a very powerful tool that's now been introduced that can manipulate the markets even further. And Boyd actually spoke about, I think I was rewatching his video before we got on here. And originally I had understood 2022. But when I was looking at it again, it was 2023, I think you said. So I might have been wrong on that. But the rate now, we always look to history. And I think that, people in the precious metal space and gold bugs are great at looking to history and looking at macro and forgetting about the day-to-day technical stuff. Because we generally are believers that the system overall is not working in the favor of people, and we have to hedge ourselves against that and look to protect ourselves in the long run. So what happens on the day-to-day is not as important. And I think that ethos is why a lot of people in the Bitcoin space, especially those who come over, are doing the hodl and never sell thing, because they have that belief that it might be similar to the metals, which isn't true, because you can't destroy gold or silver as easily as you can wipe a computer. And sure, the whole world, if you've got decentralized nodes all over the place, you can't do it by by wiping a single computer. But if you had, network consensus, you could, or if you were to, even if there was a massive, like coronal mass ejection, huge solar flare that hit the planet at the right time, it could potentially wipe out Bitcoin. And that won't happen with gold. If anything, a solar flare might deposit more gold on Earth. So yeah, gold and silver can't get wiped out. So it's not the same thing at all. But Bitcoin can. And people just don't understand how that works, because they have this undying faith in the internet, and they also most people in it believe that it's completely decentralized and there's no network consensus, which is a fallacy.
So let's go ahead and assume there's network consensus, a solar flare, something happens, and now that, because the second part of this bullet point is that the authorities come in, regulators come in, and now it's a good thing that we get rid of this unregulated Bitcoin situation, all these unregulated cryptos. And now we've got the solution. All you've got to do is sign up for the Fed coin, or central bank digital currency. So kind of run us through what Mr. Boyd Anderson said, or your own thoughts, or connect that for me, please.
Well, I'll do my own thoughts here. And
okay.
I'll actually just go back. I'm without hopefully not losing my train of thought at all. This time it's different. People, as I was saying, people like to look to history, but we're now looking at, people are talking about this new Bretton Woods that the IMF came out with. People are looking at this whole Great Reset thing that is coming out. And this isn't another, we're not going to see you could even call it 2008 a correction compared to what's going to happen now. I don't think that in this situation, it's just going to be like crashing it, and then we're going to go into a depression as a result of crashing it in the traditional sense of things. I think it's much more likely they're going to hyperinflate everything as much as they can, and then try and push everybody through while they hyperinflate currency. They're going to sell a Bitcoin as the hedge, as opposed to gold. People are going to start buying into Bitcoin to hedge against this inflation. And it's actually something else you talked about. You guys talked about on this podcast the connection between Tether and Evergrande and essentially being another offshore Fed. When you look at the fact that it's claiming to be backing something with dollars and then issuing it, and this can be then put into other assets, such as other crypto assets, Bitcoin, etc. We really are multiplying the money supply, the perceived money supply. I mean, it's if you consider the fact that what the Fed prints isn't real anyway, then what Tether is just as real as the Fed. So it's just an increase in the money supply, and I think that will end up adding into this hyperinflationary situation that we're going to go into, and everyone's going to run into crypto because it's the new thing. They're going to see it going up faster than anything else, so they'll FOMO in. I think that this bear trap before that was just to squeeze out anyone in a slightly stronger position, and then get and that's why I think this lasted a little bit longer than some of the other corrections in Bitcoin before. And yeah, they're going to pump it, and I don't think they're going to drop it until they're ready to finally have that end game, whether it's meant to be June 2022 or June 2023. And then they will either through their network consensus, hack the blockchain, or a part of this cyber polygon event that they're talking about planning to do, this simulation of an internet shutdown. It'll probably coincide with that, and when that happens, they're going to wipe out all of this money that people thought they had, while they sold everything else and put all their money into Bitcoin, and they'll be left with absolutely nothing. And then they'll come out and they'll say, well, look, the technology proved itself, but it failed because it wasn't regulated. Obviously, it was an efficient payment transfer mechanism. It was, the cryptography was great, etc. But we need to control it. We can't let it be uncontrolled, or we're going to risk having this happen again. And I think at that point too, with so many people wiped out, it'll be a great time for them to offer a UBI and say, well, what we're going to start now adding, we're going to get, now nobody's got any wealth left, we'll start giving you, your month to month through our CBDCs. And then that's going to be the end game of everyone being completely tracked and controlled.
Wow. So I just went through the rest of the bullet points. You've covered them all, and you've done an excellent job. Do you feel that you've said all you want to say?
I think that in regards to Boyd Anderson, his experience, his claims, I think that would be good. As I said, let's see if maybe you can get in touch with him. I would be happy to have another discussion on maybe some of the more intricate matters, or even stuff that's connected in an ancillary fashion, but not necessarily direct. But in terms of I think this was the pith of what I really wanted to speak to you about and bring into light.
Okay.
And when you do speak to Boyd, or when you look at this interview from him, this guy he just comes across very genuine. I'm not saying he's right, but he doesn't have. He's somebody who legitimately doesn't seem to have anything to gain out of this, and he doesn't seem to be making any further efforts to prop himself up or anything, or make bold claims. He did one interview series and then he disappeared.
Okay.
And a lot of he covers a lot. He covers everything else that's going on right now. He covers I think he does cover a little bit of the connection to Epstein and stuff, but it does seem a bit disjointed the way he speaks. Anyway, that aside, I for me myself, what I would be quite keen to discuss is, moving forward, being proactive, trying to look for ways to help people prepare for what's coming, and get into a better financial situation, and insulate themselves from it. What can people do to actually safeguard themselves from whatever happens next?
Do you have any thoughts on what will happen with the metals? I mean, we have the everything bubble, but it's the everything bubble except money, right? I mean, it's stocks, it's, the bond market, it's real estate, everything's moving except gold and silver. What happens in this, if your presumption is correct, mostly correct, and we see this hyperinflationary mode? I mean, one of the books on my bookshelf back there is Silver Bulls. No, that's one of them. There's another one, Silver, the Restless Metal. In that book, Professor Jastrom proves up until when he wrote the book, which probably, I forget, 63 or something, quite some time ago, that the ultimate hedge for inflation, or hyperinflation, especially with silver. And history can't, of course, it can be rewritten. The victors write it. I get all that. Point is, I think it's true that silver was, but this time it is different, that you've got, especially the Bitcoin maximalists, that, it's gold 2.0 or whatever. So I said a mouthful just to ask you that direct question. In this hyperinflationary environment, do you think the metals will keep up, or it'll just all be about Bitcoin and suck a lot of interest away from what people might have put in the gold and silver markets?
In the long term, it will go back to gold and silver, or maybe not to the average person. The average person might not perceive that, but the powers that be behind everything will ultimately be transacting still in gold and silver, as they have throughout history. Boyd, again, I'm not going to talk too much more about him, but he makes the claim that gold's going to go down to $700 before this is over. But then once this whole event happens, it'll take off again, because it's just going to go down for the bankers to load up on it. And what we've been seeing lately, although it hasn't been in the news as much, is you used to, see the news where, okay, Russia just bought, 800 tons of gold, or Thailand bought some gold, or Canada sold all their gold, things like that, right? There's Brown's bottom, but you hear about these like central banks and stuff doing transactions in gold as one-off events, month to month. But now, over the last couple of months, every single central bank has been loading up on gold. So again, it's look at what they do, not what they say.
Sure.
And all the talk has been about crypto. All the talk has been about, are they going to regulate it? Are they not? What's happening with this XRP case? And I think that's just to keep the eyes off of what they're doing with gold. At the end of the day, gold is going to remain anonymous. It's going to have its value. And if everyone else ends up on a central bank digital currency and universal basic income, they will be a part of that system. But the people who are controlling that system are going to want their own personal exemptions from the system. So they'll be in metals, and they've already loaded up on it now. So if you want to be able to, and gold's not going to lose its value to the ordinary person either. Even if people end up with these central bank digital currencies, they're still going to have necklaces, they're still going to have jewelry, they're going to have rings, and there's going to be a value associated with that. So having gold is not something that's going to make you only able to transact with the elite or with the banks. You'll still be able to, it will still have value to the average person, whether they understand why or not. So I think that, the metals have always been a long-term play. That's what they've been throughout history, and they still are now.
Well, I thank you for your time. I appreciated the fact that you organized everything for the interview ahead of time. It kept us both on track, and a lot to ponder. I do want you back. If I could just prevail on you a bit the next time, I'd love it if you did the bullet point method for us again. And I'll await your input, but also mine. In other words, as we continue down this journey, I may reach out to you. Feel free to reach back to me. I want to thank you for your time, your insight, and your ability to tell a story that, as perhaps bizarre as it sounds, there's a lot of things about that disappearing airplane. There's a lot going on in the gold world that we've already uncovered, and there's a lot of, I don't want to call them rumors, but conjectures that there are places of gold. There's the White Dragon Society. I mean, there's a lot of things that I want to get into with you, but there's a lot of, let's say, mystery around the precious metals, especially actually.
Now that you mentioned the White Dragon Society, what do you think of this Karen Huda's character? Are you familiar with her?
I am, and I'll just look you right in the eye and say I haven't made up my mind.
Okay.
But,
I mean, her claims to me even seem a little out of this world. To consider the quantity that she claims there to be, and how and when that would have been mined without anybody noticing is it's quite unless it was from thousands and thousands of years ago, right? But
right.
Nope. But yeah, but nonetheless, it's an interesting plot like point.
Right.
So yeah, definitely. I'm happy to have another interview. Maybe also after this, email me with some specific questions that you might be interested to get my take on as well.
Sure.
And then I will try to, again, this we put together very quickly, short notice. I'll try to think a little bit more about it and come in better prepared. But yeah, I'll definitely send you the link to Boyd Anderson's interview. And there's a lot more he talks about that I didn't have the time to cover. Also, I didn't think it would be right for me necessarily to be the one to say it. I think it would be better to either have him say it or just have clips from his interview on it. And again, I'm not trying to affirmatively say that the people he says are who they are, and if those people want to come and sit down with us and tell them why they're not involved, sure, like let's have that conversation too. But so there's no character assassination or anything like that going on. It's just This is the claim that's been made, and this is why it makes sense.
Well, it adds to the crypto conspiracy. I am very happy to have interviewed you. I appreciate your time, and we will meet again. Thank you, Credence.
Likewise. Thank you very much.